Good afternoon. I'm Tom Farr, president of the Religious Freedom Institute here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to RFI, and welcome to the launch of a critically important new Religious Freedom Institute in the United States, the National Committee for Religious Freedom. Let me begin with the bottom line. This committee will defend, in the contentious arena of American electoral politics, the religious freedom of every American and every religious community. The National Committee for Religious Freedom is the brainchild of Ambassador Sam Brownback, former Senator and Governor of Kansas and former U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. I welcome the fact that such an effective ambassador for religious freedom beyond our shores has turned his considerable talents to fight for this precious right here at home. If religious freedom is diminished and damaged in America, our beloved country will be grievously harmed, but so too will the rest of the world. Our nation has built a system of religious freedom that, while never perfect, is unparalleled in the history of mankind. It stands as a guiding light to a world sorely in need of religious freedom. In short, America needs religious freedom, but religious freedom needs America. In guaranteeing the right of religious free exercise in the First Amendment, our American founders were protecting an inalienable human right, one given to each of us by God, not by government. The duty of government, the American founders declared, is to protect religious freedom for all of us. They believed that all of America's religions would help mold the public virtue and public morality so important to their revolutionary experiment in limited government. They knew that if government assumed the authority to define and impose public virtue and morality, that is, to coerce the consciences of their citizens, the results for all of us would be catastrophic. Their system of religious free exercise, free from government interference, has produced over time the most compassionate, dynamic civil society in history, yielding tens of thousands of religious hospitals and schools, services for the poor and homeless, care for orphaned and abandoned children, and hope for the desperate, including men and women incarcerated in prisons. Unfortunately, this precious right and all the benefits it has provided to the American common good is under assault. It's being attacked by cultural and political elites who demand that religion be removed from our public life and who defame as bigots and haters those with whom they disagree on matters of religion and public policy and public morality. They're using the power of the law to drive morally orthodox people of faith and their institutions out of American public life. But America's religious citizens aren't haters, they're lovers. They love God, they love their neighbor, and they love this country. Like all others in America, they deserve a voice. The National Committee for Religious Freedom will preserve and protect that voice, along with the voices of all America's great religious communities. If all Americans have religious freedom, we will be better as a nation and as a people. Let me now turn to Ambassador Sam Brownback, who's brought us here to this day. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Tom. Religious freedom was at the heart of America's founding. Pilgrims making an impossible trip across a vast ocean to settle in a new land, not looking for economic opportunities, but for a place for their souls to freely pursue God, without government or societal persecution or condemnation. Others would follow with different faith perspectives to make America a welcoming place for everyone. Our founders decided the proper role for the government and religion was to not interfere, to protect everybody's right to practice their own faith as they saw fit. Religious freedom was seen as a divinely given right to be protected by the government, as enshrined in our First Amendment. Out of this remarkable insight, our nation prospered and our diversity became a strength, as all were welcome to pursue the formation of their most intimate being as they desired, and they could do so in community, in solitude, in public, or not at all. Now, we have practiced this imperfectly over the years, but the objective has always been clear: religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. In this land blessed with religious freedom, our incredible human dignity of each and every soul could now be free to be its most intimate self without fear. Whether you were a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, or any other faith, you had the right to practice your faith in accordance with your conscience. Out of this guaranteed freedom, society flourished. The faithful built schools and hospitals. Great social movements were advanced to feed the poor, provide clean water in destitute places around the world, and combat crimes like slavery and human trafficking. The objective of loving your neighbor in tangible ways was often done by people doing this as part of a religious community, motivated by their faith. Sadly, as has been already noted, the human right of religious freedom is under attack. Now, I've spent much of my professional career working on issues of international religious freedom. But now I've grown increasingly concerned with declining religious freedom here at home. America is the cornerstone nation for this foundational human right. Any loss of religious freedom here has an exponential effect overseas. This last weekend's attack on a Jewish synagogue in Texas reminds us yet again of this precious right and of growing anti-Semitism here and around the world. I saw an attack on a synagogue in my state while I was governor. We need to publicly and clearly support and protect religious people and their institutions. Their visible presence is a testament to our honoring of them and of what they mean for the kind of nation and community that we want to be. Now, freedom always requires people to stand up and to defend it. Today, we announce a group willing to defend this central freedom, that right to peacefully search for the transcendent, the divine, the eternal, the quest to find God and to follow him as your soul requires of you. There can be no higher human calling, nor one that requires more freedom from governmental or societal interference. This is a noble cause that we all should celebrate and encourage. We will organize nationally and in each of the 50 states. We will conduct educational campaigns about the necessity and the beauty of this sacred human right. We will assess candidates' positions on religious freedom through candidate questionnaires and distribute voter guides to inform the public where the candidates stand on particular issues affecting religious freedom. We will also ask candidates to sign a pledge to support religious freedom. Now, we are a diverse group of various faiths who certainly don't agree on theology, but we've come together to protect each other's right to peacefully practice their faith as their conscience dictates and as they are guaranteed under the First Amendment to the Constitution, which states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. These 16 words have let this nation, the most diverse on earth, live together and flourish because these words have protected religious practices from governmental interference and have been honored by our people. We are a stronger nation because of our religious freedom, diversity, and respect for religious people. We will remain strong as this great freedom is cherished and practiced. Thank you.
One of the glories of our American founding is the First Amendment. And the first phrase of the First Amendment to our Constitution guarantees the right to religious expression and to be free from religious persecution. It is a powerful document. It's partnered right there in that First Amendment with the second right, which is the right of free speech. Those are fundamental to the intent of our founders. They're fundamental, I think, to any happy society. They are the kind of liberties and rights that must be defended. James Madison brilliantly defended religious freedom. Some say his was the greatest defense of religious freedom ever written. He declared that the state civil authorities have no power to interdict and get between an American citizen and his creator, to whom the citizen had a duty to worship as he deemed fit. And this is deep in its founding. As Attorney General, I felt the threat rising. The president and others did. We issued at the Department of Justice a policy on religious freedom. I believe it was a good, strong policy, but I fear that our commitment to religious freedom is beginning to be eroded, that we are continuing to see hostility to all forms of religious faith in this extremely secular world. And it's even more important than ever that we stick together and they recall the principles of our founding, and we yield not to the secular trends that are out there today, and we defend with passion and courage and wisdom the rights that every American has to worship as they choose. I am so proud to participate in the National Committee for Religious Freedom, and its chair and leader, Sam Brownback, my former colleague, a man of courage and faith and integrity, a leader of state and federal government as a United States Senator. This is a good organization. I do believe it can make a positive contribution to the American culture today, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees religious freedom. It says that Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion. James Madison, from my state of Virginia, known as the father of the Constitution, said, quote, "Conscience is the most sacred of all property." For many Americans, our most deeply held religious values, be they Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, or some other faith tradition, are generally what informs our conscience and our behavior. Religious liberty has led to many good things. It has been men and women of faith confronted with the plight of the prisoner and burdened by the struggles of the poor, who still today seek the dignity of every man, woman, and child. People of faith have started respected universities, hospitals, feeding programs around the world. Mother Teresa, who helped the poorest of the poor in India, did so because of a deep and abiding faith. Chuck Colson, who led the way on prison reform here in the United States, did so because of his faith. Religious freedom is far more than a cultural or just political good. Religious freedom protects all other freedoms. It guards against misuse of authority by the state or restrictions demanded by vocal and aggressive minorities or majorities. Religious liberty was hard won in the past and can yet be easily lost. That is why I want to commend Ambassador Brownback and the others involved from various faith groups for establishing this National Committee for Religious Freedom. I urge people of all backgrounds all over this country to get involved. This is very important work. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. As we've heard, our Constitution is very important to our nation. And as has already been reported, that the First Amendment to the United States Constitution begins with, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. You know, John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. We fast forward to 2022, and religious freedom is one of the most pressing issues in American culture today. Religious freedom is more than the freedom to worship at a synagogue, a church, or a mosque. It means people shouldn't have to go against their core values and beliefs in order to conform to culture or government. Religious freedom protects people's right to live, speak, and act according to their beliefs peacefully and publicly. It protects their ability to be themselves at work, in class, and at social activities. Today, across our nation, we are found where people are saying that you must take off your religious beliefs before you go into the workplace or before you go into the public square. But when you are a person of faith, that faith is a part of you, all your actions, all of your activities. And therefore, we must really protect that for those that have a faith and no faith at all. When we speak about the protection of religious freedom, we mean for everyone, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you for having me. Well, today we gather here just to remind ourselves that freedom of religion, it is enshrined in the First Amendment. And we have to remember that founding fathers recognize that people have inalienable rights. They embrace the freedom of religion as an essential condition for a free and democratic society. Furthermore, they recognize that it is essential for the common good. Today, if we really think about what freedom of belief means, it means that this freedom lives in the deepest of our being. This is why it is very dangerous for us to remain silent, because what this means is that we are allowing our state or government to interfere in the deepest of our lives. It means also to give up our human dignity and to become an instrument to the service for the state. The state's role in face of the freedom of religion, it is just an obligation. And I think that it is a good time for reminding our society and ourselves. It is just an obligation to guarantee and to protect, not to restrict, not to limit, and certainly not to annul. The purpose of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948 was to set a limit to the states, to remind governments that fundamental freedoms cannot be touched because these freedoms are given by God. Our government nowadays is trying to push us back to the catacombs. We are witnessing a growing intolerance towards religious groups and to individuals that they want to be faithful to their faith and to live by their convictions. The government is forgetting, and it may be good to remind them some examples on their religious communities and the good that they are doing to the society in general. They are feeding the hungry, they are sheltering the homeless, but they are also caring for the sick, and they are caring with love, because that is what religious teaches. Our society is also forgetting what religious freedom means. It means not just that we have to be allowed to worship in our churches, inside our churches. It means that we should be allowed to express our faith in public and respectfully express it. We, as a Concerned Women for America, but me as a Navy, we want to join this movement because we truly believe that we are still on time. We are still on time to uphold our liberties stated at the Constitution. We are blessed to live in a nation in which freedom was rooted in the foundations of our country. As a Mexican, I'm ready to defend my faith and the faith of my community, the Latino community. I truly believe that if there is something good that we can give to the country, to this country, is our faith and our religious values. Finally, we have to remember that as a country, everyone is watching us. The world is watching us. We're an example for many, many nations. So everything that we do or we don't do, it's going to have a repercussions beyond borders. On behalf of CWA, we want to extend an invitation to defend our liberties, to defend the future of a nation, the future of all children, but also the future of other many nations. It is time for us to restore religious freedom as a fundamental right. Thank you.
Good to be with you, everybody. I'm Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, and I currently have the honor of serving as the chair of the Bishops' Committee on Religious Freedom. Now, we a lot of times speak of religious liberty as the first freedom, right? And it is. It's the first listed in the Bill of Rights. It safeguards our first and highest duty to honor God according to our deepest convictions of faith, and then to bring our values of faith to the public square. So while those who cherish this right celebrate the launch of the National Committee for Religious Freedom, we still feel some sense of chagrin, since here in the United States, the first freedom is surely one of the very last freedoms to finally have an organization dedicated specifically to ensuring that our elected officials take due care of it. Boy, this is an effort that's sorely needed, right? Long overdue. It makes eminent sense that my friend, a man I admire very much, Sam Brownback, would be the one to step up to home plate and make this happen. Are we ever blessed to have him as a long-standing champion for people of faith, both here and abroad? We see here today broad support from across the spectrum of that faith community. And that's not merely appropriate, that's essential, because religious freedom belongs to everybody. It's a right every one of us possesses in full measure. And this organization is rightly dedicated to the promotion of a vibrant religious freedom for everybody. I, for one, am honored to count myself among the staunchest supporters of this project, and I'm sure grateful to be part of it. I look forward to working with you. Thanks, and God bless.
I'm Jacqueline Rivers, the Executive Director of the Seymour Institute for Black Church and Policy Studies. On behalf of the Seymour Institute, it is a pleasure and an honor to support the National Committee for Religious Freedom, founded by our dear brother and friend, Sam Brownback. As leaders in the Black Church of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer, we know how important religious freedom is to African Americans. As early as the end of the 18th century, Bishop Richard Allen founded the Mother Bethel in Philadelphia, and soon after that, the first independent Black denomination, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which fought against slavery and served the poor in the city. And as late as the middle of the 20th century, religious freedom was again essential for African Americans through the transformational civil rights movement. Under the leadership of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer, the civil rights movement won voting rights for Blacks across the South and ended the terror of that segregated regime. And today, religious freedom continues to be essential for African Americans, who are the most devout of any demographic group in the country. Black churches serve the poorest of the poor in inner city neighborhoods, motivated by their religious convictions. We are eager to support the National Committee for Religious Freedom and Sam Brownback in this important work.
My name is Jeff Balabon, and at the outset, I want to confide something personal, and I suspect it may be a sentiment that may be shared by most, maybe even all, of the advisory board members who have joined together with Ambassador Brownback. And what I'm about to say may seem like an odd thing to say at the launch of a C4, but I don't like politics. And I certainly don't like mixing politics with religion. But there's simply no avoiding the growing governmental, political, and cultural assault on faith in America. This requires that Americans of good faith, whether or not they think of themselves as Americans of faith, unite to protect our fundamental religious freedoms. As a newly minted Senate staffer almost 30 years ago, the very first event I attended, accompanying my then boss, Senator John Danforth of Missouri, who also was an active Episcopalian priest, was an address he made to a group of Christian educators. Two observations he made then have stayed with me from that day to this. The first, he said that religion shares an etymological root, lig, with ligament, that which binds us together. The second, he reminded the audience that the Bible's word, the biblical word for peace, shalom, actually is shalem, wholeness, unity. Unity, peace, doesn't mean sameness. It means different parts, different people coming together to unite one whole. It means e pluribus unum. It's inseparable from America's greatness and goodness. And so honestly, I'd much rather spend my life thinking about any number of things, not politics. I'd rather not feel compelled to spend my life daily fighting anti-Semitism, fighting for fundamental freedoms our country was founded to protect hundreds of years ago. But so long as there are those who would use the reins of power and influence to undermine religious freedoms, so long as anti-Semitism and anti-religion rises as a mainstream political and cultural norm, and it is, we can't sit still, we can't rest. Recently, due to the rising violence against Jews, a Jewish advisor close to President Biden suggested on social media that perhaps America's Jews should remove our yarmulkes and other visible identifiers of faith. He meant well. It's like that many places around the world, and certainly not only for Jews. Places most American families fled to come to this blessed nation. But hiding ourselves, denying who we are, cannot be the answer. This, the National Committee for Religious Freedom, this is part of the answer. And so I applaud my dear friend, mentor, Ambassador Brownback, for this initiative. I'm deeply honored to be included. If I'm going to have to be in politics, there's nobody I feel more privileged and more blessed to stand beside. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Joe Cannon, and I am thrilled to be part of this cause and working in the trenches in the foxhole with Senator Ambassador Brownback. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, though I'm not here in any official capacity representing the church. But it is well known, our church has a long history of supporting religious liberty and religious freedom. It goes back to the roots of our church. I'd just like to quote something from a statement given in the 1830s about our belief about religion and government. Quote, "We believe that governments were instituted of God for the benefit of man, that he holds men accountable for their acts in relation to them, both in making laws and administering them for the good and safety of society. We believe that religion is instituted of God and that men are amenable to him and to him only for the exercise of it, unless their religious opinions prompt them to infringe upon the rights and liberties of others. But we do not believe that human law has a right to interfere in prescribing the rules of worship or binding the consciences of men, nor dictate public or private devotion, that the civil magistrate should restrain crime but never control conscience, should punish guilt but should never suppress the freedom of the soul." Religious freedom is central to the understanding of the formation and creation of our country, and our country is a beacon for the rest of the world. And I'm so happy to be involved in this cause of religious freedom. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Yaakov Menken, and I'm the managing director of the Coalition for Jewish Values, representing over 2,000 rabbis in American public policy. And I'm delighted to be joining this organization in my personal capacity. In his role as first president of the United States, only a year after the passage of the Constitution's Bill of Rights, George Washington penned a letter to the Jewish congregation of Newport, Rhode Island, in which he said, "It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people, that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens." And then he quoted the prophet Micah, whom you may know as Micah. "Everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." The idea that no government could proclaim a single national religion to be right, but rather must grant to each individual the right to practice his or her own religion, was totally innovative in its time. And from that first moment, it contributed to America's success. Puritans in Massachusetts and Amish in Pennsylvania and Anglicans in Virginia were able to set aside their differences and work together. As Jews, we have long experience with the active suppression of our religious liberty. From Babylonian pagans who destroyed our first temple 2,600 years ago, to the atheists of the USSR, who were trying to stamp out religious practice just over 3 decades ago. And just this past weekend, we saw our religious freedom directly challenged by an anti-Semitic bigot in the middle of a campaign of anti-Jewish incitement by an organization here on American soil. Today, though, many of the dangers are shared. If a football coach cannot pray after games, then a Jewish teacher can be fired for praying the afternoon service before sunset on school property. If Christian foster care agencies cannot operate by their precepts in Philadelphia and South Carolina, a Jewish agency cannot ensure that a Jewish child is raised in a Jewish home and educated in accordance with our beliefs. Happily, one of my daughters is engaged to be married, and as we've done for millennia, the ceremony and dancing will be strictly separated by biological gender. It'll be in a hotel ballroom. According to a bill that passed the House last year, her wedding will be a bias crime. Whether you are of any faith or none, one thing is clear. Whenever religious or any form of ideological freedom is seen as what President Washington called the indulgence of the dominant class, your right to believe as you wish is immediately threatened. A society that does not tolerate your right to do what I believe might be wrong is one that will eventually suppress my right to believe what I think is right. And that is why I wholly support the National Committee for Religious Freedom and hope that you will too. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. We live in an increasingly dissolute age that tries the souls of those of us attempting to live our lives in accordance with transcendent values, not the vacuous temporalities of those immersed in what the Quran refers to as the life of this world. For those who see the world as a bridge that we must cross and not a permanent abode we can place our trust in, our religious faiths center our existence in ways difficult to imagine for worldlings immersed in a more material reality. Religious freedom, the ability to worship freely, practice one's faith, and associate with like-minded believers without coercion, takes on a power and a meaning that without which life would be almost unbearable. The first freedom enshrined in America's Bill of Rights must, like all freedoms, be vigilantly guarded by those who know that each generation has a duty to renew its commitment to preserve and protect this precious legacy left to us by those who went before us as a sacred trust that we too must inevitably pass on. To feel secure in our freedoms is to reveal an ignorance of both history and human nature that invariably leads to a loss of those hard-won rights. Today, we find our first freedom again under threat, not from monsters or tyrants, but often from well-meaning ideologues who feel they know what's best for the rest of us. The platitude "live and let live" cannot be coded language for "live like us or we will make your lives miserable." In America, we have a God-given and government-protected right to live our lives in accordance with our faith in our protected churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples. Moreover, the constitutional right of freedom of association, the twin half of freedom of religion, protects our right to maintain our religious institutions of education, charitable works, hospitals, and other institutions, while working with people who share our religious values. We cannot allow a secular laicism that demands its own type of religious test to take from us our civic inheritance and deprive us of our God-given rights. The National Committee for Religious Freedom takes this country's long-standing commitment to our first freedom seriously. And whether we are faithless or faithful, we should all understand that when our religious freedoms face any threat, every other freedom of perennial value faces threat. As a Muslim and the current president of a religious liberal arts college, I understand both the importance of this freedom as well as the dangers now confronting it. The Quran says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." The verse assumes a more intuitive truth. There should be no compulsion in irreligiousness. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robert George, McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. I've also had the honor on 2 occasions to serve as Chairman of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. You know, religious freedom is under threat, not only abroad, but here in the United States as well. And we as citizens need to stand up for this first freedom, this most fundamental freedom. And we need champions and organizations that will champion religious liberty for all. That's why I'm so delighted to hear about the founding of the new National Committee for Religious Freedom. And I'm even more delighted that the new committee is going to be led by Sam Brownback, the former governor, senator, and ambassador at large for religious freedom. Under Ambassador Brownback's leadership, the new organization is going to be a force for religious freedom for all throughout the United States. And when we say for all, we mean for all. We mean religious freedom for Christians, like Ambassador Brownback and myself, for Jews, for Muslims, for people of every faith and shade of belief. What we don't want is the idea of religious freedom for me, but not for thee. No, what we want is religious freedom for everybody. And the new National Committee for Religious Freedom will champion that principle, that ideal. So congratulations to everyone involved in founding the new organization. Best wishes to Ambassador Brownback in his important leadership role. I want to say I stand ready to help in any way I can, and I hope that you will join us.
My name is Sean Wu, and I'm honored and proud to serve as the Executive Director of the National Committee for Religious Freedom. Starting today, the National Committee for Religious Freedom will begin the necessary and important work of defending and protecting a fundamental American right, the freedom to believe and practice our faith. We are a nonprofit and nonpartisan group with a singular mission of defending and protecting religious freedom. As of today, we have already started the process of organizing chapters in all 50 states with our partners and supporters on the ground. In strategic states where this freedom is directly under assault, we will deploy all necessary and appropriate resources to defend that right. We will work with churches and religious organizations and civic and community groups, anyone who cares about the values we hold dear as Americans and as a free nation.
As you heard from our distinguished group of advisory board members, the threat against religious freedom is both real and urgent. As we often do with certain issues, like race in America, for example, religion is also used as a wedge issue to divide us rather than to unite us as a country and as a people. It is time to change that narrative starting now, starting today. Join us by visiting our website at www.thencrf.org and sign the pledge to add your voice, whether as a concerned citizen, an elected official, a faith leader, or a member of the clergy. Take the pledge today by visiting our website to condemn any discrimination, bigotry, or violence against any religion that is practiced in these United States of America. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sean. And I want to thank everybody that's here and everybody that's tuned in. This is an important cause, and it's an important moment for this cause. Join us. Join this effort. We need you. We're going to organize everywhere across this country. This is a fundamental issue. It's a fundamental cause, and we need you to be a part of it. So I hope you get moved in your own heart today as you've watched this, as you've listened to this, as you've heard people comment, that you say, I need to be a part of this because we want you to be a part of it. Sean listed the website, thencrf.org. Come on that, sign on it, join the cause. We'll be organizing in your state, and we need you. The cause needs you. The country needs you. The world needs you to be a part of this. God bless you all.